Well, I don't accept culpability in a roundabout way. Um, I might be like a little bit responsible for the shitty state of the world right now. Uh, in a very roundabout way. Uh, and it's tenuous enough that who the hell knows? I don't think that it's okay. I'm probably not responsible, but here's the story. Um, I was very active on Twitter. I used to, get in arguments on Twitter and then turn the arguments into essays that I published and then promoted on Twitter and stuff. Um, and um, I was very, I spent a lot of time hanging out with like post rationalist Twitter and Teapot, you know, um, and so as a result, like occasionally, like people would follow me that were just Silicon Valley, whatever. Generally for other reasons, like there was a VC who followed me because I was a little bit interested in Renaissance magic, and he had an interest in that. Anyway, for about 6 months, Mark Andreessen was following me on Twitter. And during that time, I published an essay that was sort of complaining about um, the way that sorry, the cat just jumped on my lap. The way that the concept of the user agent has been degraded, because the agent was this idea of you'd have a daemon on your computer that had an expert system, and it would do tasks for you. And I wrote this essay, I think originally as a Twitter thread, and then wrote it and posted on Twitter, and it circulated a little bit. It made its way into my book, about how like agents are like a really cool idea that in the web context we've just sort of boiled down to, oh, this is like the name of the web browser. It's not even the name of the web browser. It's like it's just a bunch of junk. It's like a sequence of names of obsolete web browsers, just a bunch of junk that you have to like check. But it's not an agent. It is theoretically supposed to be the name of the agent, which was supposed to be a separate thing in the web browser. But a lot of other like web tech stuff that was talked about early on that was really cool, nobody actually ever did it, because it would have given too much, power to users and not enough powers to corporations. That's basically why it didn't happen. Because at that, since very early on, the browsers have been sort of written by corporations or written using corporate money or whatever. Anyway, uh, I hadn't heard anybody talking about agents sort of actively, with the exception of a couple like weirdos like me who read technology writing from the 70s and 80s and think, oh shit, that would be really cool. Nobody else was talking about agents at the time. Now fucking everybody's talking about agents. I also was a big supporter of this idea of, oh, if you're an artist and you're coding, you can sort of do experiments using computers to generate or modify the things that you're writing as sort of a collaborator. Um, Again, like I was promoting these ideas that um, right now I'm fighting against and complaining about a really stupid version of these ideas that I had been promoting a couple years ago. Because, like, to me, it doesn't make any sense to have an art machine that does the whole process, right? It makes sense to have it makes sense to have distortion filters that are semantic. In other words, like, it makes sense to have things you can do to fuck up your art when you get stuck, that will fuck it up in ways that relate to the ideas in your art, instead of a much more fine granularity of individual pixels or letters or whatever, right? Like bigger, broader strokes. And again, also like this idea of a user agent. It's really great to have, a thing that you own as an individual on your computer that does work for you. The thing is, this is the key, it actually has to be yours and on your computer and do work for you, which means it cannot be statistical, because all of these statistical training things, you have to ingest so much junk data that you can no longer trust it. You cannot trust a large language model because it is large. It is too large to vet the input data, the training data. It's never going to be trustworthy. And so a good user agent would be based on actually mature technologies, like shit they figured out in the 80s, like an expert system, a theorem solver, a scheduler, all of these things that are actually trivial to implement. And it's not like, again, my complaint was not, oh, this is something that's impossible to write. My complaint is, this is something that if you wanted a professional quality version of this, you would have to get you would have to get a team of professionals together and have them work on it full time for a little while. And there isn't the money, because there isn't the hype. And this is true of a lot of things that would require a small team to work for a little while to do a professional version of. So, I worked for Project Xanadu for a while. And Project Xanadu has this reputation of, oh, the technology is impossibly complex. Oh, it's completely never going to work. Oh, it's like... No, I worked for Project Xanadu. It's like, the technology is doable. The problem was always with organization. The problem was always 100% with organization, because the only person willing to pay for a Xanadu type hypertext to be done is Ted Nelson, and he's got some money, but he doesn't have enough money to himself pay a whole professional team full time for a couple of years. And so, he tried to do it and got people who, were not as good, or he got some good people, but then they had to, they couldn't, he had to be, the team got sold off to Autodesk because they needed to be paid before, they needed to be paid more than he could pay them, essentially, without having the profits of the thing already being done. And then by the time I worked for him, it was all volunteer stuff. And so I was like, I was early career programmer. But like, again, like, I was right out of college. I understood how to do all of the things that needed to be done. I couldn't do them on my own while also doing college and my full-time day job and dealing with, like, my shitty ex and stuff. And so, like, I washed out. But, like, a small team like I worked with at my day job could write a Xanadu in a few months, right? Could write, a real user agent in a few months. This AI shit is not a substitute. And I feel insane trying to tell people this is not what I wanted. I even fucking wrote a book about why this is a bad idea. Like, my book that I was writing, Big and Small Computing, is specifically about, when reliability matters. Check it out if you want to. TikTok is not advertising. Anyway,